Dr. Michelle, most people are not living well. They're dealing with debilitating symptoms such as brain fog, fatigue, weight loss resistance, and even autoimmune conditions. Eventually, these lead to chronic disease and essentially a shortened lifespan. You have a brand new book that is coming out that's aimed to fix chronic illness. Can you share the first steps we need to take in order to reclaim our life and achieve amazing health?
Yes, thank you for asking. Honestly, what really led me to this book is a realization that we're asking the wrong question. We're asking things like, what kind of medicine is right? Is it this program, or is it this pill, or is it this supplement, or is it Eastern medicine, or is it Western medicine? Like, what medicine is right to help me stay well? And that's actually the wrong question, because at the end of the day, none of those things keep us well. Our cells keep us well. Wellness is actually inside of every single one of us. And our cells are the thing that do the healing. So the right question is not what kind of medicine, because honestly, every kind of medicine is just a band aid. It's
Mm,
just there to support your cells in doing their job. But the right question is, what do my cells need to stay well? And that's what the book addresses, is what do your cells need to stay well? Not only that, but how do you figure it out? How do you figure out which cell needs help right now? And how do you figure out what then do you do to help that cell with what it needs? And, it's interesting because I use the analogy of a band-aid on your finger. You put a band-aid on your finger and you think, oh, this band-aid does the healing, right? At least my granddaughter thinks it does. but but it doesn't. It's the cells that do it, and they do it miraculously without us even thinking about it.
mhm,
But they give us signals. They tell us that they're struggling. They tell us that they need something. And in modern medicine, we've just started turning them off. You
mm,
get a headache, you take ibuprofen. Well, that signal, that symptom is the actual cell telling you what it needs.
mm.
So, this book also shows you how to listen to your cells, how to listen to symptoms, and how to interpret them to be able to understand exactly what they're telling you and then what to do from there. This goes so much along with what you teach as well with metabolic health. And in fact, I have an entire chapter talking about the way that the body creates energy and how cells work and all of those kinds of things and how it utilizes different fuel sources. And I know that that's your whole world. I talk all about that. And then how do you utilize that information you're teaching and blend it with what cell could use this kind of help that you are teaching that our cells need? So that's really the bottom line. That's where I started from, is we're asking the wrong question. Let's start
Mm.
asking the right question.
You're speaking my language. This is so empowering for the person to understand, right? Because this puts us in control. It's not something external that we
Exactly.
need. To your point, it's internal. The inner physician, it's in the cells. And Michelle, we have 50, 70 trillion cells. So it's
37
important.
trillion exactly.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Depending on the person in the study, right?
Exactly, as
Yeah.
an estimate.
Trillions of cells. We know that. So to have an idea of where to start, what these symptoms mean, what is this communication? Let's brain fog, like you mentioned, autoimmune. I mentioned earlier. Okay, so let's start right here. What are the top things you see that's interfering with our cells? The most common interferences that we see out there.
So really, I filtered down, and let me back up just a touch to the genesis of the book as well.
Yeah.
I share a lot about how I got sick and how I mercury poisoning through doing dentistry for decades, breathing in all the mercury, and I got really ill. It changed the entire trajectory of my career, of everything that I've done since. But I don't talk a lot about how I got well. And that's
Mm,
really what this is it's an answer to, how did I get well? And I started studying all sorts of alternative medical therapies or medical traditions. So I started studying Ayurveda from India and Chinese traditional medicine and German herbalism and Native American medicine. I mean, I dove deep in all these. I had these charts all over my walls. And all of a sudden, I started seeing that there was a commonality in all of them. They were all speaking the same things, but they were using different words, which makes sense, right? Because they're not going to speak Chinese in India, so they were using different words. But for example, in Ayurveda, you can assess what your cells need. And I took an assessment and it said that I was a pitta. And, you know,
What's a pitta, Michelle?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's what I realized is that all of these things were saying the same thing, but they weren't in ways that we could infer meaning into. I can't tell you I'm a pitta and you can know what that means. I didn't know what it means. I still don't know what it means. You know, so that's where I realized the disconnect came. It's not that these traditional medical systems were wrong. In fact, I think that they mostly were right, but we just didn't have a way to interpret in today's world. So I looked at all of them and I came up with a couple of different models that could simplify and really make it possible for us to understand our internal physicians to understand how to do this. So first of all, I realized if you can learn to keep one cell well, you can learn to keep every cell well.
Mm.
So what does one cell need? One cell needs supplies. There's four things I figured out. They need supplies, right? So you got to feed them stuff. That's the fuel. That's a lot of what you talk about. Let's feed them stuff. Let's give them what they need. And this could be food. This could be oxygen. This could be, water. That's the stuff they need. They need support. So they need to have the right environment. They need to be able to detox and get rid of. They need a waste removal system. That's the support that every cell needs. They need security. So they need to be protected from the things that are, gonna try to kill them and take them out in the world today, whether that's toxins or microbes or whatever it might be. And they need signals. And the signals is the one that people understand probably the least. That's that they need to be able to communicate with one another. It's kind of like in our world today, if the internet goes out, all of a sudden, like all heck breaks loose because we can't communicate
We
anymore.
don't know what to do with ourselves.
We don't know what to do with ourselves. And the same thing happens in our cells. If they're not able to communicate with one another, then all heck breaks loose. Like nothing works correctly. So you've got to have proper signaling. So that's it. Every cell needs those four things. They need supplies, support, security, and signals. So that's okay, great. But again, what the heck do I do with that, right? How do I figure out where do I start? So again, I went back to all of those traditional medical systems. And one thing was fascinating. They all used seasons like spring, summer, fall, and they all used the elements of the earth to describe the way the body works as well, especially in Chinese traditional medicine and all these different things. They talk about, water and air, and they use the word wood. I call it plants. So again, I started grouping all of these with all these charts in the walls and said, there's a magic code in all of this. And I've created what's called the seasons assessment. So it's a symptomology assessment. It's listening to our cells, taking the time to actually listen to what they're telling us. You assess, what do I feel right now? So you go through and you mark off, yes, 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 yeah, that one sounds right. And at the end of the assessment, it puts you in a season. So these are the 5 seasons of the earth that you know of. Spring, well, you probably don't know the third. Spring, summer, harvest, which is a little new addition, fall, and winter. And each of those seasons correlates with an organ system. And this comes from Ayurveda, from traditional Chinese medicine, from all of these things. So for example, spring goes with liver, gallbladder, eyes, and tendons. So when you check off all those symptoms, it leads you to that. The starting place for you is spring. Your cells are saying, your liver cells, your gallbladder cells are raising their hands saying, I'm first, pay attention to me first, start here. So once you figured out your season, all right, I'm spring. Now what? Well, then I teach you in the book how to supply your liver cells what they need. So if you're a spring, what supplies do you need? What support do you need? What security do you need? And what signals do you need? So you literally just walk down this path of being your own physician. What's your season? Great, I'm a spring. What do I do for supplies in a spring? This is what I'm going to start doing. And the fascinating thing about it, and the way that why this really makes sense, is if I say to you, okay, you're in a spring. Think about what spring looks like usually. Like people don't know. I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that not everybody knows what grows different seasons. I've gardened since I was like 4 years old. So I just know what comes up in the spring, but not everybody does. But in spring, things that are green grow. Yeah, things that are green grow. So lettuce, spinach, arugula, green onions, peas, broccoli, everything green grows in the spring. Well, guess what is amazing at cleaning your liver and gallbladder out?
All the green things.
All the green things, exactly right. And in springtime, what are we doing from a movement standpoint? It's like warming up. So we're starting to get outside, right? We're starting to walk. We're starting to maybe start jogging a little bit, but we haven't really jogged all winter long. So, we're just getting back into shape. We're taking it a little slower. We're doing some stretching, maybe some Tai Chi. That's what your liver and gallbladder need. They actually need that compression from some of those Tai Chi movements. So it's spring helps you figure out what your body needs if you just think, I'm in a spring right now versus let's say your symptoms came back and you're in a winter. So you have chronic UTIs, kidney issues, prostate problems. It's all like urinary tract related, everything. You got kidney stones. All right, what do I need? That's a winter. All the urinary tract things are in a winter and water.
Hmm.
So, wintertime. What are you eating in a wintertime? You're eating things like pumpkins, carrots, potatoes, beets, all the things that store all through the winter. You're not eating lettuce and spinach and arugula. You're eating these complex carbohydrates because they nourish your kidney cells. They nourish your urinary tract cells. They are the things that help to combat that. You're eating a lot of garlic. Garlic is great for that urinary tract infection. Garlic stores all winter long. So again, it just kind of populates what you're doing. You're thinking about, well, what movement am I doing in winter? Well, not a lot. In fact, I'm getting in the sauna. I'm getting in a hot bath. I'm using a lot of these water therapies, warm water therapies. So it really just guides you in how to take care of your cells. It's one of these things that when I finally realized it, I went, it's right here in front of us. We just forgot how to utilize any of it. It's what our grandmas and their grandmas knew.
Mm.
It's what all these traditional healers used to do. We just forgot to do it anymore. So
What a
it's
unique, yeah. What a unique way to put this together. I think it's fascinating, Michelle. I haven't really heard anything like this. It's very different and makes sense to me, right? And so we're not only going to learn about our health, we're going to learn about gardening, is what I'm hearing. Because I didn't know that, by the way. I never gardened, so I'm one of those people that I learned something new there with the different foods that are available. So give me an example. Like, we know health span and lifespan are different, right? We're constantly searching for extending our lifespan, which is great. But what if our health span decreases, right? We want to live longer, but feel good, living well while we live longer. So can you explain the differences here between lifespan and health span?
I swear you read chapter 1.
Well, I have an
You
overview of the
are
book here. So I
so
didn't read it,
brilliant.
but I have the overview.
No. Yeah, there's and there's some great books talking about longevity, right? A lot of new research talking about aging, and this is kind of a big thing lately. Everybody's talking about this. But as I looked at it, I thought, I don't want to be 90 and in a, bedbound. That's not life to me. That's not living well to me. And really, my definition of living well is everybody's able to live their unique potential, their unique mission. To do that, you need energy. You need perpetual energy. You need all of these things to be able to really do that. So lifespan is the length of your life. Health span is the quality of your life while you're living. And sadly enough, research shows that typically lifespan in today's world average lifespan is about the mid 70s for men and women. Men are a little shorter than women, lifespan wise. Health span is the mid 60s.
Mm.
And health span, the definition is you're able to take care of your own needs on your own. I'm thinking that's 10 years away from me. I'm not going to have somebody like wiping my butt and showering me in 10 years from now. That is not on my plans. I can tell you that. So, what has to happen to make sure that we don't have an incredible decline in health span, even as lifespan continues? And it's all about the cells. One interesting thing is that every single cell in our entire body remakes itself within a year. Some are fast. Some cells are like turning over every 7 days. We have new cells going on. So that means when you look at yourself today, everything you see is new within the year.
Mm.
You know what's cool about that? is within a year time, you could literally reverse every single health problem you have. You could literally turn over every single cellular issue you have within a year
It's
because
amazing.
every cell is new in a year. Isn't that cool?
It's amazing. You rebuild your entire human body in a year. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
I mean, how cool is that? So really when it comes from, comes to health span, lifespan, all those kinds of things, it's just all about learning how to do what your cells need to be well. Okay.
I'm with you 100%. I'm all about living longer, but feeling amazing while you live longer. Um, One of the things you talk about in the book is inflammation. And what does inflammation do to affect our cells, and why is it being ignored for the most part?
So it's interesting because inflammation, we don't walk around saying, I have inflammation. I mean, sometimes we'll do, we do, but usually we walk around saying things like, man, my fingers are so stiff today.
Hmm. Yeah.
Or I just always feel a little lousy, kind of headachy when I wake up in the morning. Those are the things that we start saying, but we don't necessarily call it inflammation because we don't know to call it inflammation. But what inflammation is simply your cells that are unhappy for some reason. And they're sending you signals. They're saying, hello, hello, why are your fingers sore? Well, there are things that are not draining. In fact, so I'll share a story with you. Patient had terrible sore fingers all the time. She actually was from India. And so she knew that turmeric and a lot of those real warming spices in Indian food was fabulous for inflammation. So when you think about the cell wall model, that's supplies, right? So supplies, she was supplying her cells with all sorts of good stuff, turmeric, all sorts of things that should help with inflammation. And her fingers were still so sore. So as we talked, I said, it's not only just supplies, we have to address some of those other things as well. So let's talk about support. How do we support those cells in being well? So I taught her all about lymphatic drainage
Mm.
and moving things through, out of the fingers, but first opening up, lymphatic termini here, lymphatic termini here. You and I have a friend that does this so well. And I taught her this lymphatic massage. Literally within a day, her swelling was down by almost half in her fingers.
Wow, it's awesome.
So we understand a lot about food and its influence on health, right? It's becoming a lot more common to talk about this. How do we eat? What do we eat? When do we eat? This is your world entirely. But that's only one piece. Then we have to figure out about that support piece. How do we create an environment of health for the cells as well? And that's the lymphatic massage, that's the Tai Chi, that's the acupressure. All of this is in the book. And it's interesting because it's different depending on the season you're in.
Hmm.
So one of my beefs is multivitamins, because a multivitamin is the same amount of nutrients every single day. Well, every single person, all of us are going to cycle through needs in our body. This is another thing I talk a lot about as well. Even if we don't want winter to come, like I'm not super excited that winter's here right now, because when I go running in the morning, like this morning I was running and it was 26 degrees.
Wow.
It
Good
was so
job.
it was so freaking cold. I actually overdressed because I was so sad about it. I wore like 3 coats and I got home like, okay, I'm a sweat ball. That was a bad mistake here. But so I'm really not that thrilled that it's winter. I would love it to be spring right now where I live. However, it's not. And why? Because my garden needs the winter. During the winter is when the soil regenerates and everything rebuilds the nutrients, so that when I plant a seed in the spring, the seed can grow until it can grow into a plant again. There's no such thing as a perpetual spring. The same
Mhm.
thing in our body. There's no such thing as a perpetual spring. We do not have an unlimited supply of energy and everything that every cell needs at all times. So we are always going to be cycling through these seasons. That's the other fascinating thing, is we're always going to be cycling through what our cells need, and it's going to change. So there really is no one size fits all fix for everybody at every season, every day of their life, at every age. You can't have that. There's no way. So it's really important that you learn to listen to your cells, like swollen fingers, like inflammation, and say, what does this mean? What does this mean right now? You know, what cell is unhappy right now? And what do I need to do to be able to take care of it? And inflammation is the precursor. It's really just the signal. It's the body saying, okay, listen to me right now. You know, your fingers are sore. Let's listen. And if you don't listen and you just take some ibuprofen, which just kind of quiets the symptom but doesn't fix the problem, then the body starts yelling a little louder and it starts showing up as diabetes and high blood pressure and
Yeah.
high cholesterol. And then if you don't do anything about that, except for just dampening down those symptoms as well, you take a cholesterol lowering medication, you take a high blood pressure lowering medication. So now you're just dampening down the symptoms again, then the body starts screaming even louder. And that's things like cancer and a heart attack. And those are the cells saying, you did not listen to me. I was trying to tell you what was happening here, and you just suppressed it. And unfortunately, modern medicine does do that. We're
Yeah.
very good at suppressing the symptoms instead of paying attention and interpreting the symptoms.
It's true. And there's a sort of a brainwashing that has occurred with modern medicine that symptoms are bad. And to your point, Michelle, they're
Yep,
actually an amazing gift from your cells. They're
yep.
communicating the body's check engine light. And it reminds me of the old whack-a-mole game at the arcade, right? You hit a symptom as the mole, right? And then you hit
Uh-huh.
it, oh, you're good. And then another one pops up and it's just never-ending game until eventually it gets really serious in the case of our health. What about besides listening to the body, which is the most important thing? I agree. Like
Yep.
pay attention. The body's always communicating. What are some other metrics or ways we could track our health and our progress?
So, symptoms are the number one thing that I use for sure because it just walks you through those seasons. But I also believe it is paying a little attention to the earth and the things that are changing. Now, where you live, things don't change a lot, right?
Yeah, it's 68 degrees for me right now. Sorry, Michelle.
Yeah, it was exactly the opposite of you this morning, you know? Exactly, sorry. Um, but the earth goes through cycles even where you live. It's 68 degrees, but there are changes that are happening where you live as
Yeah.
well. So I think it's also accepting and being okay with changes that are in our body. For example, I usually put on about 5 pounds during the winter. Now, I don't really like it. Let's just say that because, like, some of my pants are a little tight around the middle, and I'm not really thrilled with that. But I just say, you know what? That's my body holding on to things and storing up resources for later. It's being okay with it and being okay with my body doing what it needs to do. Because in the spring, when the springtime comes, I'm going to start eating a lot of arugula and lettuce and spinach and broccoli again. And things are going to detox and clean out, and I'm just fine. But it needs a little bit of extra weight right now, apparently, if I'm going to be running at 26 degrees. I need a little bit more insulation on me right now. So it's probably the defensive mechanism. So I also think it's leaning in and accepting the seasonality of our systems and our body, that they're going to continually cycle. And so another person was asking me on a podcast, she has struggled, one of her personal struggles and health challenges has been depression. And she said, all right, this is so interesting. She said, what season do you think depression is in? And I had never considered it before, never even thought about it before. And I said, well, to me, that's a winter.
Yeah.
That's a winter. And what it is your body saying, it's time to slow down. It's time to sit on the couch. It's time to take a bath. It's time to regenerate because I cannot go 24/7, 100 miles an hour all the time. Our bodies just simply can't do it. And it was interesting because I was talking with her, she was feeling it very emotionally. This had been her challenge. She'd actually tried to commit suicide with 4 little kids and
Wow.
very, very sad story. I even got a little teary-eyed talking to her, but I said, "I think that the depression was needed for you
Mm.
because again, you didn't listen to the symptoms early enough and your body had to start screaming at you to be able to do it, to be able to get you to sit down on the couch." So I also think that just being okay with not being the same all the time, and giving ourselves a little grace. Okay, those 5 pounds in the winter, oh well, it is what it is. It's what my body needs right now. So
Mhm.
be okay with it. It's all right. I'm not going to beat myself up about it because it's actually what I need right now. And I think that's really important because I think that we have these views of the way we should be and that we're supposed to be that way all the time. And we can never change and we can never have a day where we just put our feet up and, we can never do any of these things. And it's just not true. Our body goes through seasons and cycles.
This is true. It's a universal law, right? Everything is cyclical. It makes Total sense to me. Now,
One of the best predictors that will determine how long you live is VO2 max. VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use during intense exercise, indicating your aerobic and cardiovascular health. What if there was a way to improve your VO2 max, which may extend your lifespan at the same time, help you build muscle and burn fat in a fraction of the time that it would take to go to the gym? Well, I'm referring to the 𝙎𝙬𝙀. And I gotta tell you, I've been using my 𝙎𝙬𝙀 for weeks and I absolutely love this machine. The 𝙎𝙬𝙀 was developed with leading exercise researchers to deliver the shortest, most effective workouts. Their signature re-hit workouts create the most potent training stimulus in just two 20-second sprints. It's scientifically proven to deliver superior health and fitness benefits compared to regular cardio exercise in 90% less time. Unfortunately, 95% of Americans don't exercise, and their number one reason is they don't have time. Well, the cool thing with the 𝙎𝙬𝙀 is that the workouts are only 5 to 8 minutes long, and you just do 2 to 3 workouts per week, and you'll get all of these amazing results. As a subscriber to my YouTube channel, 𝙎𝙬𝙀 is offering you $250 off your bike. Head over to 𝙎𝙬𝙀.com/freedom and use the coupon code FREEDOM for $250 off. We'll also drop that information in the notes down below.
what about the person who is 50, 80, 100 pounds overweight? They're obese, potentially. What season does that fall into? And maybe we could go through some of the cell needs here. We have the supplies, the support, security signals. What are the things they can do to help overcome that?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I'm working with a woman right now, and hers is an interesting story. Her mother is a nurse practitioner that deals with rheumatology, arthritis, basically. That's what her mother's job is. This woman, she's mid-30s, and she's about 50 pounds overweight for over what she would like to be, from a weight standpoint, about 50 pounds overweight. And she has chronic markers for arthritis. I mean, how, like, it's just ironic, right? And her mother has done
Wow.
everything that she can think of, every possible thing that she can think of to do to help her. So I was guessing her season. All right. I was guessing that she was going to be in winter. I thought, all right, this is absolutely a winter. Your body is holding on to things. It's in a starvation mode, back in the old, in fact, so my grandma grew up in southern Canada, in Alberta, and she grew up on a sugar beet farm. And it was lean living. Let's just call it that. It was very lean living. And all they had in the winter were things that they could grow and store. So they were living on potatoes, on beets, on whatever they could store through the winter. So when spring came, they were so excited for everything that popped up out of the field. In fact, they would sit in the field and they would eat green onions straight out of the ground. And you think a green onion, but it was the only thing that had been fresh for 5 months.
Wow.
But in March, they would call it the hunger month. That's what everyone would call it, as the hunger month, because they were running out of stored food and
Mm.
things hadn't started coming up in the spring yet. So bodies were hoarding and holding on to everything. And that's what I often find when people are losing or are not losing weight, is their body is hoarding and holding on to everything for a reason. And in dentistry, in my practice, we talk a lot about there's reasons, things like infections in the mouth, that the body is in fight or flight mode. And so it's literally saying, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm in a really bad place here. So I'm just going to hold on to everything in case, because I got to get through the hard times here. I got to get through the hunger months here. So it's holding on to everything. So we start looking at things like, are there infections in the mouth? Are there airway issues? Are you not getting enough air when you're sleeping? And if you're not, then your body literally is in fight or flight mode all the time. It can never turn off. So I looked at this woman and I said, I think you are deep in a winter. You are holding on to everything. You are in this fight or flight mode. You are getting prepared for the hunger month. So she took the seasons assessment. I was wrong. She is smack dab in a spring. And I said,
Mhm.
you know what is awesome about that? That means your body is ready. We just have to give it what it needs to be able to do that. So in a springtime, what are we going to start doing? All of the things we were just talking about. So she is
Greens.
doing, yep, she is doing a whole bunch of greens right now. She's doing arugula salad. Why arugula? Why bitter things? Bitter things actually contract the gallbladder and the liver, and they start squirting things out and getting rid of things, dumping things. So really, weight retention is often the body storing up for the hunger month. And we think, oh, it's because I'm hungry. Well, no, it's because your body doesn't know what's coming next. So you have to help it through the season and then give it the next thing so that it can start to release and go, okay, now I'm going to do this. So from a movement standpoint, what are we going to be doing in springtime? We're not running marathons, I'll tell you that, because we're just coming out of the winter. And believe me, I was slow as tar going up that hill this morning because I am not on my peak shape right now. Let's just say that. But that you're not going to be at the end of a winter. So she's 50 pounds overweight. She's not running a marathon. It would be a silly thing to tell her to do that, right? So what are we doing? She's literally walking 3 times a day. 10
I
minutes.
love it.
That's it.
That's
She's walking
awesome.
3 times a day. That's it. She can do it. She's like, oh, yep, I can absolutely do that. At the end of every meal, I'm just going to walk around 10 minutes a day. That's it. So she's walking
Great.
around 10 minutes a day. She's doing all sorts of greens. She's also doing, this is a fascinating thing that I don't think people understand. This is an Ayurvedic principle. So we start thinking greens. All right, let's do some green smoothies, right? First thing in the morning, let's start doing some green smoothies. Let's get things moving. No, because there's something called the digestive fire. And I'm sure you know about this a lot too. Digestive fire, literally, it's the strength or the digestive strength that's happening in your gut right now. And it's also, this is so fun in the book, I talk about the seasons of the day. That every day we actually go through a spring, a summer, a harvest, a fall, and a winter as well.
Interesting.
Sleep is wintertime, right? We should not be eating. We should not be doing anything during sleep time, nothing, because the body is not prepared to be digesting right then. That's not what we do in the wintertime.
Yep.
So we're holding on, we're regenerating, we're doing all that, but we're not eating. So springtime, your digestive fire is ramping up. You're coming out of a winter, out of sleep time, but it is highest at noon. And I know you talk a lot about intermittent fasting and things like that. That is the most beautiful principle ever when it comes to digestive fire, because digestive fire is hottest at noontime. We should be eating our largest meal at noon, and we should be eating our most complex meal at noon. So something that takes the most digestive strength to get rid of. If not, if we're eating all this heavy food in the evening, your body cannot assimilate it. It's just going to pack it back where it needs to go and hold on for wintertime. There's no way it can deal with it. So you wake up in the morning, you're going to drink a smoothie, right? No, that's pouring cold water on a warming up digestive fire. Makes sense?
Yep.
You're not going to do that first thing in the morning. You're just going to squash it all back down again. You want to encourage it to help it warm up. So what do we do first thing in the morning? We do warm water with lemon juice in it. Why does lemon juice? Lemon juice is starting to wake up everything, and that pucker is going to help wake up your liver and your gallbladder, get everything moving. So you want to do that, a little apple cider vinegar, a little cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is going to warm. That's what you're doing first thing in the morning, is a warm water drink with some lemon juice, cayenne pepper. Then you get into your bigger meals, midday. You're snacking through the afternoon. You're doing some lighter stuff in the evening, and nothing through the winter all the way back around. So this is what I really have. So we create what's called a Cell Well formula. And I start you off with 7 days if you don't get any choices. You get no choices in the first 7 days. You just do what I tell you to do. And then you can start twisting, making it your own, do whatever. But you've got to get in the cycle of a daily routine for whatever season you're in, as well as what are you supplying, supporting, securing yourselves from, and helping with signals as well. Signals, like I said, it's the one people don't often know. It's that communication piece, and it is the literal electrons. Our cells communicate by sending each other these electrons back and forth. Where do we get them from? Well, there's a place that everybody, in fact, there's a lot of hypotheses about this that I've thought a lot about. It used to be that everybody was working in the ground, right? Everybody was pretty much an agricultural worker up until 1800s. Mid-1800s are things when things really got, when people started moving to the cities and moving into the industrial era. Everybody before that lived on the soil. They slept on the soil. They ate on the soil. They worked in the soil. Well, the earth is an enormous sink of electrons. Sink meaning supplier. That's where all the electrons, think of all the lightning strikes that hit the earth every single day. It's filling it up with electrons. When we are in contact with the earth, we are actually fed electrons. When we are not in contact with the earth, we lose that supplier. And I like to think of it as you're trying to stay fueled, but you never go to the gas station. So part of that signal piece is also you got to go touch the earth occasionally, or you got to put earthing sheets on your bed, earthing pillow on your, you got to be sleeping on it. You got to be doing something to recharge. Otherwise, your cells are in chaos. I also think that that person that's 100 pounds overweight, they're living in absolute chaos. They've got to feed their body with electrons. So it's going to be you are sleeping on earthing sheets every single night of your life. You are taking your shoes off and walking on some grass or dirt. I don't care where you're going to find it. You're going to go do it. You are also going to be feeding your body electrons. And people don't understand this. The word electrolyte is because it's carrying electrons. So electrolytes carry electrons. So we have to be feeding our body electrolytes as well in order to give them the energy that they need to do their job. So that 100-pound overweight person as well, everything's sluggish. Nothing is energized. You have to give it what it needs to actually be able to keep yourself well. So lots of electrolytes and lots of touching the earth in some way. So those are also things that she's going to be doing as part of this program.
I love those tips. I'm all about grounding, earthing, whatever we call it these
Yep.
days, and it's like taking a handful of antioxidants. And
Mhm.
it's free too. I mean, unless you buy the sheets and the pillows and all that, but you could just go outside and
Yep.
ground yourself. One of the things I do all the time is do that in my front lawn, and I go there with my dog. He grounds, I ground,
Mhm.
and I notice the way I feel the rest of the day. I just feel more calm, but also tracking my heart rate variability, which is a great metric for my nervous system.
Yep.
It increases my HRV whenever I do that. The more often I ground myself.
Mhm.
Now, Michelle, with the seasons that we have throughout the day, which is interesting that happens, and it makes sense why you do not want to eat during the winter at night. It's just
Mhm.
not a good idea for many reasons. You outline many of them.
Yep.
Where does coffee play into this? It's warm. It's a warm drink, but what's the best time frame for our coffee, our beloved coffee?
So here's the problem with coffee. I actually talk about it in the book. Here's the problem with coffee is it actually dilutes the signal. It actually turns the signal off. It turns off your
Cell
cells.
signaling, you mean?
Yep. It's your symptom. It turns off a symptom.
Oh, got it. Okay.
It turns off a symptom of fatigue, right? And so it's giving you an artificial boost. But the problem is the boost didn't actually give you fuel.
Got it.
So what you're doing is you're actually going to overspend your fuel reserves. Does that make sense? So you're
Yes.
giving yourself an artificial boost. I'm feeling awesome now. Doesn't matter what time of day you're doing it. I'm feeling awesome now because I have my coffee on board. Now you're going to over exert yourself and use up more than your allotment of energy. And then you're going to have a crash because you overdid it. Instead of saying, I'm tired right now. Okay. I mean, honestly, tired is not a deficiency of coffee, right? Fatigue is not a deficiency of coffee. Fatigue is a
What?
deficiency, really. I'm serious about this. Fatigue is a deficiency of electrons, of energy, of your cell's ability to make its own energy. So I'm not saying you have to get rid of your coffee, but what I'm saying is you've got to listen to the cell first and say, what does my cell need? If it's tired, if it's fatigued, what does it need? First of all, did I not sleep? Maybe that's the starting point. Maybe I need some more oxygen. Maybe I'm in a fall right now. I've got to support my lungs, fall is lungs and air. And, maybe that's where I need to go first. But what do I need to do to energize my cells? So that's going to be supplies, support, security, signals, all those things that we just talked about. Then go get your coffee if you want it. But the coffee covers up the cell's symptom or signal, and you end up overexerting what your cell really has ability to do. And then you have a crash. So I still think coffee probably morning because you're warm and you're warm,
Mhm.
but don't do it without giving something else for the body to utilize too. So throw some butter in that coffee. Do something like that along with it, just so that you can get a little more out of it.
Makes sense to me. It does. I love your perspective there.
I have a brand new book called Metabolic Freedom, published with Hay House, being released May 13th, 2025. This book outlines the exact steps to restore your metabolism, heal your hormones, and burn fat. It presents to you the problems to why we see metabolic disease and the exact steps to restore your metabolism to burn serious fat. At the end of the book, there's a 30-day plan for you to lose up to 30 pounds in 30 days. And here's the exciting announcement. You could get this book right now. And when you order it today, you'll get a free Metabolic Freedom mini course where I teach you how the metabolism works, my favorite keto and fasting hacks to burn fat, and exclusive interviews with Dr. Jason Fung, Dr. Daniel Pompa, Cynthia Thurlow, Megan Ramos, and others. That is all for free in this mini course. If you go to the QR code on the screen right now, or if you're listening on the podcast, head to metabolicfreedombook.com or click the link at the top of the notes of this video and this podcast. You could go purchase the book right now and get immediate access to this free mini course and exclusive interviews. Click the link down below or go to metabolicfreedombook.com.
You mentioned fasting a little bit earlier. Do you talk about fasting in the book? And I'm curious to hear your current thoughts on intermittent fasting.
I don't talk about fasting in the book because, I'll tell you why, because I don't think anything is a one size fits all. And so I really didn't want it to be just about one methodology or one thing. I want people to be able to think their way through it and go, okay, winter time starts at about 6 p.m., meaning I'm not going to eat after that.
So pretty much when the sun sets, around the sunset.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. Okay.
Is when the winter time, the winter of the day begins.
Got it.
That's when the body is recouping, it's pulling everything in, it's protecting, it's re-energizing. That's when the body backs up memories. That's when the body, I call it construction zone. That's when the body's rebuilding all of its cells. That's when it's doing all of that. If you give it a whole bunch of food and ask it to do that job instead, you're using up your dwindling resources by the end of the day to take care of that food when it should be rebuilding cells. I don't want to compromise my cell building by giving it some food it has to digest because it doesn't have much acid left. Like it's not the time to give it a lot of stuff to eat right then. So the fasting comes in intuitively. Does that make sense?
It does.
Then you wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, let's drink some lemon water right now. Let's, something warm. Maybe it's warm coffee if you want to do that. Along with some butter, something energy-wise, if you're taking it because you're drooping. And then by lunchtime, you're going, yep, it's time for some food. And my digestive fire is cranking. Let's eat. It's time. Let's do this. So it's almost an intuitive thing that the body's telling you. And it might be that you're not doing it in winter because you never warm up that much. So you need to have a slow, steady drip of food throughout the day rather than a big meal at noontime because you never get that warm in a winter season. This is why this is an interesting concept. Winter time, where you are actually, do you have oranges growing where you are? I believe you do.
We do. Yep. Florida is a lot of oranges here. Yep.
And when do they grow?
Right
now.
Oh yeah, all the time.
That is incorrect. They do not grow all the time.
I don't know. You're asking somebody who has no idea about this stuff.
Okay, I'm going to quiz you. I'm
winter.
I'm going to keep quizzing you. No.
They grow in the winter, Michelle.
You are correct. They
Yes.
grow in the winter time. So yes, they grow in the winter. They are on right now. Why? Because in the wintertime, what do kidneys need? They actually need to prevent stones and to loosen and get rid of stones. They need citrus fruit. Citrus. Isn't that interesting? The acid from citrus. So winter season actually needs all of that to keep moving. So that lemon in the morning helps with all of that as well. But there's so many things. But also, what is citrus full of? Vitamin C.
Yeah.
And I just saw something the other day that said, don't quit calling it cold and flu season. Start realizing it's just lack of vitamin D. What did it say? I can't remember. It was great. I was like, that is so true. It's not cold and flu season. It's just that our cells need more security right now.
It's true.
They need more vitamin C right now. All right. So let's crank up that citrus fruit. So keep sending them my way from where you are because we don't grow it here. It's 26 degrees outside here.
To your point on eating like at night, it's one of the things that impacts me the most. And Dr. Pompa, we both have mutual friend. Anytime he's in town with his wife Marilee, they always want to have dinner like at 10 p.m. And it drives me crazy. And I do it because I love them. But oh my gosh, does it impact me? Like it impacts me so much when I eat at nighttime. And I aim to get most of my calories before 6 p.m. where I'm done with most of the calories coming in earlier in the day. I like the idea of like noontime being that time. But yeah, it affects me so much, Michelle. But how do we have dinners, we have invites, and sometimes we make exceptions, right? So is there anything we can do to overcome the way it makes us feel when we have that late night of eating?
Yep. So think about, what does digestive fire mean? That's going to mean two things. It's going to be stomach acid, right? So
Hmm.
that's like literally the acid that's in the stomach that's processing the food. And I talk all the time in dentistry about this because people don't realize a lot of times tooth decay cavities is simply because you're not digesting food properly. So you might be eating
Mm,
fabulously, but when the food hits your stomach, there's not enough stomach acid there to actually break it apart. And
interesting.
this is where a lot of food sensitivities come from as well. So if you're having
Huh.
issues with gluten, actually, let's say this because this one to me is really fascinating. So, a stomach acid breaks apart proteins into amino acids. Proteins are, I like to think of them like a Lego. So, it's a whole bunch of Legos stuck together. That's the protein. When they hit the stomach, it breaks off into the little red Lego and the little yellow Lego and little ones. The body knows what to do with the little Legos, with the amino acids. It actually uses those and packages them back up and builds new proteins during the wintertime, during the nighttime. But if your stomach acid is not adequate, if you don't have enough acid, they stick together. The whole Lego sticks together and moves through the digestive tract that way. The body doesn't know what that is. It doesn't know what to do with it, and it doesn't recognize it. So now it starts to mount a defense against it. This is a food sensitivity.
Hmm.
What are the most common food sensitivities? Gluten, dairy, eggs.
Yeah.
All three are large proteins.
Interesting.
You can't break them apart. So, how can you intensify stomach acid? Well, you literally can take stomach acid. So, if you're eating at 10 o'clock at night, you're probably going to want to take a pill of betaine along with it.
I do
Betaine,
that. Yeah,
yep,
definitely
yep.
do that.
You're probably going to want to drink some lemon water along with that meal because
Good
you want
idea.
that acid. So, you're going to want to add acid as much as you can to the meal to be able to ramp up that stomach activity. The other thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to increase your energy. Energy is just electrons. So you're going to want to drink an electrolyte before that meal. You're
Mm.
going to want to get as many electrons in the system as you possibly can before you're going to hit that meal that you're going to have a hard time digesting. So it's understanding a little bit how cells work. And if we have to occasionally work outside of the season, we can. But then the next day, you're not going to eat at 10 o'clock at night. You're going to eat at 6,
Right.
and just getting back on track. But those couple of things could help. Just ramp up your digestive fire artificially a little bit for that day.
That's a good tip. I will do that, or I'll just say no to Dr. Pompa's dinner invite next time.
Or just say you're fasting that day and you can't eat.
Yeah, exactly. I'm fasting. You love fasting, don't you, Dr. Pompa?
Exactly.
Um, I want to ask you a couple of biological dentistry questions, if that's okay, just
Yep.
because that's your jam, and I just love
Yep.
to. I just have a few things, but before I do, I mean, for those watching and listening, you could pre-order Michelle's book. It's called "Living Well with Dr. Michelle: A Comprehensive Handbook for Optimal Health and Unlimited Energy." That's something that
Yep.
we all want.
Yep.
If you go to livingwellbook.com, you could pre-order the book. The book is going to be released on May 20th, 2025. You could pre-order it right now. We'll put that link down below of the YouTube video, the podcast. Go get it. Anything else you want to add to that, Michelle?
Yes, two things. So when you pre-order the book, you're going to get the seasons assessment I talked about right off
Oh,
the
cool.
bat. It's digital, so you're going to get that immediately in your inbox. You're also going to get a first steps guide where it says, okay, you just tested to be a summer. Here's what you do. So it's going to walk you through your first steps. The second thing is that all profits from the book go to charity. So when you buy the book, when you
Awesome.
pre-order the book, you're going to go back to the pre-order site. You're going to type in your order number, where you ordered it from, and what charity you want all your profits from your book to go to. So it's all going to be to charity, and you're going to get all the stuff you need to get started right now. Why do I need you to pre-order? You know this as well as I do. He has a book released almost the same time I do. Because pre-orders alert the booksellers and the publisher that this is a topic that people actually want to hear, that
Yeah.
people are interested in. And so they'll print more, they'll publish it, they'll put more publicity behind it. If these are things you want to know more about, then let booksellers know by pre-ordering our books and letting people know that that this is a book to pay attention to. So thank you all. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, so important. I agree. As somebody who also is trying to sell pre-sales right now, and it's so cool
Mhm.
that my book is same month as your book,
Yeah.
right? It's so awesome. I love that you're giving all that away and you're donating the proceeds to charity. So everybody listening and watching, go to the link down below or go to livingwellbook.com and
Yep.
pre-order it. It makes a huge
Awesome.
difference. Don't wait for the book to get released. Do it right now.
Exactly.
And
You
maybe
know.
when the book gets released, then you could buy it for a friend or a colleague. Um, Getting to the questions now. Let's discuss mouth taping. I've interviewed several biological dentists, and I first and foremost, like so much respect for you, Michelle, and all you amazing, the amazing biological dentists out there. I think it's such an incredible field, and it's so needed in this day and age. It's changed my life and my health and a lot of my clients. So I just love what you do, and I learned so much from you. And I asked the question about mouth taping because it's become such a popular trend on TikTok and Instagram Reels, and there's different thought processes on it. And I want to just hear your thoughts right now on mouth taping at night while you sleep.
Mouth tape is a Band-Aid. It doesn't fix the problem.
Right.
Can it help while the problem is being fixed? Absolutely. So why is mouth taping necessary? Or why would you even want to do it to begin with? Well, the first reason is that nasal breathing does a lot of things that you don't even understand. When the air goes through the nose instead of the mouth, what it does is it warms it up, it humidifies it, it filters it. So it makes it much better for your lungs, for your tonsils, for everything to get that warmed, humidified, cleaned air. The nose does a lot of good things, but also it creates something called nitric oxide. When the air goes through the nose, it creates nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, which means it's going to allow better blood flow, open up all the vessels everywhere. It's going to decrease blood pressure. It's going to do all sorts of things for your cardiovascular system. It also stimulates growth hormone. And you might think that this only applies to kiddos, but it doesn't. What do you think drives all that cell rebuilding that goes on? We have to have the growth hormone as well. So nasal breathing does all of those things. Now, why? Well, I think it's because we typically nose breathe at nighttime. And what should happen at nighttime, which is the winter of the day? The regeneration, the rebuilding, the cell rebuilding, all of that should happen. And so that needs to happen while we're breathing through our nose. So why might you not be able to keep your lips together at nighttime? If there's not enough room for air to get through, not here, sometimes here in the nose itself, and you can do even things like nose cones, which are things that go in the nose and hold the nose open. But there's a next part that's often the tight spot, the thing that really constricts and you can't get by it. And that is called the airway. It's between the nose and the lungs. So it's the tube that the air has to pass through here. If it is too small, then oftentimes the mouth has to drop open so that it opens up and it pulls the tongue forward and it allows more space for things to get by. So that's what we usually will look at is on a cone beam CT scan, we'll say, all right, what's really going on here? Why are you mouth breathing? The other thing is it could be that while you were young, there wasn't enough air going through. And so you end up dropping your mouth down, and just looking at your growth and development, I can tell that this is you because you're long and lean, long and skinny. When you got long, skinny growth pattern, it means that you dropped that jaw open because it created a long, skinny facial structure. So we know this happens. The problem is now that you're long and lean, you're long and lean. So there's not a lot of space in the mouth for the tongue, for the tissue, for everything to fit. So you end up dropping your mouth again to get all that forward so that you can breathe at nighttime. So mouth taping keeps the lips closed against kind of sometimes that growth and development issue that you have, but it doesn't fix anything. So it's a nice Band-Aid and an adjunct to be able to get that nose, get air through the nose, get all the benefits there. But there's a few things that have to happen. You have to be able to suction your tongue to the roof of the mouth to be able to nose breathe. So sometimes people will mouth tape, but they're still really not able to get the tongue up. So they end up breathing out of the sides of the mouth. It's really not benefiting anything. So we look at, do we need to do something called myofunctional therapy, which is training for the tongue to get it up and forward where it needs to go. Sometimes we need to do a tongue tie release, get the tongue where it needs to go there. Sometimes we need to make more space in the mouth. We need to do palatal expansion, roof of the mouth expansion. We can do this.
That's what I did.
10 kids. Exactly. Sometimes we need to make more space so there's room for the tongue to come forward. So really the mouth tape, like I said, it's a Band-Aid. It helps with the situation, but it's also a signal that you need to pay attention to that something isn't allowing you to get the air you need. So now you need to go and do some further work.
It makes sense to me, right? That's exactly the case. Find out what the actual cause is. For me, it was having braces as a kid, having crowded teeth afterwards because I didn't wear my retainer, and going back to crowded teeth and eating processed mushy food.
Yeah.
And my biological dentist in 2018, when he looked at my mouth, his name is Dr. Theodore Herman here in Miami. He said, "You have the highest, most narrow mouth I've seen in my history of my practice." I'm like, "Oh, what can we do?"
Fabulous.
Yeah, right. Fabulous. Deviated septum. And he was looking at my sleep scores, and I had sleep apnea, like extreme sleep apnea. I was waking up throughout the night. So he
Yep.
said, option one, which I don't recommend, you could have surgery. Option
Mhm.
two, the slow natural route where we wear an expander. Um, and then we apply like an Invisalign, which is now a Candid Pro for me. So I
Yep.
wore this an expander for 4+ years, and it took me that long because I speak all day and I couldn't wear it all day long. So I only wore it for like 12 hours a day. But I finally got off of it. I'm about 5 months into the Candid Pro now, and my breathing has been so much better. My face, Michelle, looks completely different than it did.
Wider. Mhm.
Yeah, wider. And I looked at photos, and everything just looks. And I'm getting better sleep, and I have more energy too. Right,
Yep.
to share that story, because this is so important. Once you take care of this, you'll have more energy. Your cells will start to communicate better. It
Yep.
did for me, and I'm still working on it personally. But that's my story.
Yep. Love it. Love it.
Now, flossing. Um, Before we brush, after we brush, does it not matter? Or should we not even floss? Excuse me. What are your thoughts on flossing?
So, this is a little heretical probably to say, but you don't always have to floss if you don't have things that catch food. So sometimes dentistry that you've had creates places that food catches, creates places that plaque catches. In that situation, you've got to get it cleaned out. Otherwise, you're going to get new decay underneath that area because things
Yeah.
are going to get trapped there. If you've never had a cavity in your life, if all your teeth line up the way they should, you may never need to floss in your life. I see people that they're like, I don't floss, I really don't. And I say, well, your gums are actually perfectly healthy. You're fine because there's no food, there's no places that food catches. So if you're thinking about it from a matter of this is when we remove things that are stuck between the teeth, plaque and food, what is the best time to do that? I like to do it after brushing because you're going to brush everything and then you're going to get the last bits that you didn't get with the brush out. So that's my preferred way. Honestly, it probably doesn't matter though. You can also do it before and loosen all that up first and then brush. It's just a matter of getting it all off the teeth.
I love it. Great. That's super useful.
If you're following a low carbohydrate, keto diet, or carnivore diet, this is one of the most important tips. I see a lot of people who struggle with keto and carnivore, and the reason they struggle is because they are losing too many electrolytes. They're becoming mineral depleted. Every cell in your body needs minerals to function, to produce energy, which helps you burn fat and feel good. My favorite minerals and electrolytes are from Beam Minerals. These are fulvic and humic compounds that are bioavailable that have over 70 minerals in them. It tastes like water. They're carnivore friendly. Let me explain why. There are no anti-nutrients in them. It does not break a fast. As a matter of fact, it could support your fasting window. And it's been a game changer for my health, and I recommend it to all my students. Head over to beamminerals.com. Use the coupon code Azadi at checkout, my last name, Azadi at checkout, to get a nice discount. Beamminerals.com, coupon code is Azadi.
I have a final question for you. Before I do, share your practice name and website in case anybody wants to go check you out in Utah.
Yep, that's totalcaredental.com. And also check out livingwellwithdrmichelle.com. That's where I put so much information on all the social channels, Living Well with Dr. Michelle. That's where I put so much information about all of this because we just barely touched the surface of things today. So there's lots of patient stories, lots of wellness stories on there, and you can go and often find something that sounds just like you. And then there's also on that site a directory because that's my most common question is how do I find a dentist just like you? There's a directory on that website as well that directs you to dentists in your area that provide some of these same services.
Yeah, go check that out. We're going to put all that in the notes down below. And of course, livingwellbook.com is where you go to pre-order the book.
Yep.
Final question is about gratitude. I call vitamin G the last question I always ask my guests is what do they have gratitude for? So Michelle, what do you have vitamin G for today?
That's so funny because I actually use vitamin G in the book as well, but I use it in the term of grounding.
That's, you know what? That's another form of vitamin G. It really is.
Exactly. And I'm going to say that that's what I'm most grateful for is the earth. I believe that the earth gives us everything that we need to be well. We just need to reconnect and re-notice her again. We've forgotten to even pay attention to what she can teach us. Like you said, you don't know that oranges grow in the winter. Now you will. And we are going to start paying attention to the earth because she's given us so many signals. So I'm very grateful for the earth and all she gives us.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm excited to read your book. I've pre-ordered it myself and everybody else go pre-order the book. It's livingwellbook.com. If you enjoyed that conversation, you're going to love the recent conversation I had with the mineral master, Caroline Allen.
and the mitochondria and how it uses minerals to produce energy and burn fat and feel good.
There are 4 main reasons that we are dealing with mineral deficiency. The first is that our food supply is lacking in minerals. And